your thoughts on the America's nuclear deterrent, and is it relevant now and going into the future?
It is relevant now. It's ready, and we have airmen sitting in missile silos in multiple places that are farther, that are remote, and they're serving that mission every day, and they're ready to do the mission. They're highly trained, and they're ready to go. But we have to modernize. The key components we own, most people say you have the nuclear subs, you have the intercontinental ballistic missiles, and you have the conventional air launch, or the air launch cruise missile, which is a nuclear warhead, and they will say that we own 2/3 of the nuclear enterprise. The reality of it is we own the vast majority of the nuclear command and control part of it as well, and we actually believe we own much more than 66%. We actually believe we own more like 75 or 80% of the nuclear enterprise when you roll those other things in. The air launch cruise missile was built in 1980s and fielded with a 10-year shelf life. So we bought those in that time frame. We're going to use them for 10 years, and then we're going to replace them. We let the contract 2 years ago to go replace those. That's how long it took us to get to that point. Minuteman III, that's what's our intercontinental ballistic missile force. That force was also built with a 10-year lifespan expectation, and it's been in the field over 30 years as well. So we have got to modernize our nuclear enterprise if we're going to stay relevant as we try to do nuclear deterrence in the longer run.
What's going on in space that's driving the creation of the Space Force?
So everybody, space is a hot topic for everybody. Actually, I will have to say one of the best things that we've been able to do as a department is openly talk about space as a warfighting domain. If I would have talked about space as a warfighting domain probably 2 years ago in my previous job, I would have probably been fired. Because there would have been the words, you couldn't talk about it being other than a benign environment. You couldn't talk about a possible threat there. You couldn't talk about what potential adversaries may be doing to try to get to minimize that skill set. So to me, acknowledging it as a warfighting domain is a major step because we don't have to tiptoe around and we can educate the American public that many of the things that we take for granted that are always going to be there, there are people that want us to not have those capabilities because they want to limit our ability to employ air and sea power. So to me, that's one of the biggest things that's going on in space. It's an acknowledgement that it is a warfighting domain, and it's an acknowledgement that we have to treat it like that and that we have to pay attention in that area. And we have to do a better job of integrating it into our campaign plans. You can't white card that it's always going to be there. White card, if you don't know what that is, if you're doing an exercise and you don't really know how to play that exercise out with what you're testing, you do a white card and it just says this occurs. And you don't run it through all the ringer and you don't put the same rigor as you would if you're trying to fly an airplane and deploy it. We can't white card anymore. We've got to look at what happens if we lose certain capabilities. What happens, to me, that's the biggest benefit of what's going on in space.